Hello and welcome again to the learning course of the UNCCD for Focal Points. I hope so far that you have been enjoying yourself and that you've enjoyed the previous lectures. Today we want to address two major questions. Firstly, the bodies of the convention, and secondly, we will deal with the COP by itself. Now, as we have explained and as you have already studied and learned, the convention is basically a legal instrument. It's an international legal instrument that brings people or parties together to work together to deal with the questions of desertification, land degradation, and drought. But that's only a legal instrument. For this legal instrument to function, it needs mechanisms, it needs structures, and these have to work together as a system in order for the convention to be implemented. So today we're going to look at what sort of mechanism, what sort of structure actually exists. In other words, what are the institutions or the bodies of the convention? Now, as I have said in a previous lecture, there is something called the COP. The COP stands for the Conference of the Parties. This is the supreme body of the UNCCD. What do I mean by supreme? In other words, it has authority to take every decision regarding any matter under the UNCCD. The COP, as it stands now, has about 195 parties. Now, these parties meet at the conference once every 2 years, and they discuss all the issues of the convention. So this is the supreme body. This is the ultimate authority. Now, everyone, all the parties are allowed to participate in the conference of the parties. However, it must be noted that only governments are really parties to the convention. Everybody else is basically observers or special guests, but the governments are the parties. It therefore means that when we have a decision-making process, it's only the parties, only the governments have a right to determine what the decision should be. Okay, so this is about the COP, but as I said before, we will discuss the COP further in the second question. So this is just an introduction. So that is the supreme body, but the word supreme tells you that there are other bodies. It is the highest body, but there are other bodies. And the other bodies of the convention are several, and we will now look into these. First and foremost, I want to tell you something about the CRIC. The CRIC is the acronym for the Committee for the Review of the Implementation of the Convention. As its name suggests, its main purpose is to review the implementation process. In other words, how are the actions being implemented on the ground to achieve the objectives of the convention? Now, the CRIC is a subsidiary body, and there you see the difference. In other words, it is under the COP, not above the COP, but under the COP. That's why it's called a subsidiary body. So the CRIC is one of the main subsidiary bodies of the UNCCD process. Now, unlike the COP, you must know that the CRIC meets once every year. As I have said to you before, the COP meets once every 2 years. However, the CRIC meets once every year. In other words, we can say therefore that the CRIC has what is called sessionary sessions and intersessionary sessions. What do I mean by that? There are sessions of the CRIC which are held parallel or at the same time with the COP. And there are sessions of the CRIC which happens when the COP is not taking place. So this is how the CRIC functions. Now, the CRIC is like the COP in one way, in that all the parties to the convention do meet at the CRIC. But here they discuss specifically the implementation process in a concrete way. Now, the CRIC does not make decisions. This must be understood. However, after reviewing the implementation process, it then creates a general report. And based upon that report, draft decisions are made, which are then sent to the COP. In other words, the CRIC helps the COP to review the implementation process by providing concrete information as regards the implementation process, which the COP then takes into consideration when it is making its decision. Now, so that's the CRIC. Let's go to a second subsidiary body. This second subsidiary body is called the CST, the Committee on Science and Technology. Now, as its name implies, its main task is to deal with two main questions: the question of science and the question of technology as regards the process of the UNCCD. So here, this committee is where most of the science people or scientists and those involved in technology meet and discuss the issues which are pertinent for the implementation of the convention from the standpoint of science and technology. This, again, as I said, is a subsidiary body. Therefore, the COP stands above it. How does the CST work? Well, in the same way, it has its meeting. Usually these meetings are held parallel with the COP, and it discusses the issues, the science and technology issues. Again, it does not make decisions. It gives a report as to what the people have discussed and what they would suggest to the COP should be decisions to further the science and technology process within the whole UNCCD process. Now, it is important to note that the CST does not really send its final report directly to the COP. What actually happens is that the CST report then goes to the CRIC. The CRIC considers it and then makes further recommendations to the COP. So you can see the process as to how the CST work. They do their work, then it is sent to the CRIC, then from the CRIC on to the COP. So that is the CRIC. Now, these are called subsidiary bodies of the convention. But apart from subsidiary bodies, there are other institutions of the convention. The two which are most important and which are prominent at this stage is the Secretariat, from where I'm speaking to you, and something called the Global Mechanism. Now let's look at the Secretariat. If you look at the convention, you would see that a Secretariat has been established. This Secretariat has been based here in Bonn since 1999. And it has a specific task or role. Its first and foremost task is to service the COP. In other words, the COP needs documents, it needs information, it needs to be organized and prepared, conference rooms and so on have got to be done, and there has to be a body which does that. Because as I've said to you before, the COP only meets once every 2 years. So it has created a secretariat. And that secretariat, as its name suggests, is to provide these sort of secretarial services to the COP. Now, you will understand that since the existence of the Secretariat, in a permanent Secretariat that is, in 1999 to now, the process has changed a bit and new things have been added. Other opportunities have come about, other challenges have come about. This therefore means that the role of the Secretariat has also changed along with the process. And now we turn to the role of the GM. The GM just means the global mechanism. Now, it is important to understand that when this convention was established, there was a need to ensure that some sort of financing is available to the process. And originally, the GEF was not a financial mechanism of this convention. And so therefore, the global mechanism was created. Its task is to facilitate the process of financing and technology transfer as regards the implementation of the convention. As you are aware, there are many affected developing country parties. It is important to underline the word developing. Therefore, meaning that they need some resources, some assistance, both in terms of finance and both in terms of technology. And one of the roles of the global mechanism is to help country parties in finding these resources. So these are the four main institutions I wanted to speak to you about. It's important to always remember that you should read your course material, and as regards this particular lecture, you should use this as your Bible. because in this convention you would find a lot of the answers. Now, I just want to sort of give you a little bit of probing questions, so to speak. Think of this. How does these bodies actually work? In other words, there must be a way, a procedure. How do they work? That might be something that you would find interesting. I said earlier in the lecture, the role of the Secretariat is changing as regards the process. How has that changed over the years? Another question you might want to think about is, how are subsidiary bodies established? Who established them? And which subsidiary body or bodies were established in the convention, and those which were established after the convention was adopted. Finally, again, I want to encourage you to read the course material, and apart from the course material, take a look at the convention, because there you should and you would find the answers.